return to school, we're actually the second educators in your children's life because you are the first teachers. And we want to work in partnership with all of you because we can't do this work alone.
Que su voz cuenta y que si nos unimos podemos lograr grandes cosas para nuestros hijos.
I love the diversity of the school district. Whether you know it or not, this district speaks 83 different languages.
To know that the administrative offices, they have my back. Not only my back, but they have my child's back.
Every child, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of income, regardless of need, every child deserves to have their needs met.
No one person can do it alone. The teachers can't do it alone. Administration cannot do it alone. It's going to take the parents, the community.
I'm very thankful for the partnerships that we have with our communities in both cities that represent our school district. We always ask the question, how can we even do this better? And I think that's where community schools come in because that takes us to the next level.
Welcome to the September 21st meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District. Superintendent, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Huey.
Here.
Ms. Larrett.
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
All are here. Thank you.
All right, before we go into closed session, and we'll be going into closed session for the following issues: student matters, employer-employee relations, conference with legal counsel regarding litigation, conference with real property negotiators, and personnel matters. But before we do that, is there any public comment online? Nope. All right, so we will recess to close session, and we will be back at 6 o'clock sharp. We're in recess. Welcome to the September 21st meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board of Education. If you'd please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, broadcast statement. A broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board Policy 1313 promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among employees, parents, and the public. We will treat staff, parents, and members of the public with respect and expect the same in return. If any member of the public uses obscenities or communicates in a demanding, loud, insulting, and/or demeaning manner, the board will calmly and politely admonish the person to communicate civilly. Board comments during public meetings are an important component of public engagement and transparency. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their speaking time to another member of the public. All written comments submitted by 3 p.m. today to the board have been read. Per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into a two-way discussion on any matter not on the agenda. Superintendent, will you take the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Melajor?
Here.
Mr. Merrill?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Huey?
Here.
Miss Larrett?
Here.
Miss Lofthouse?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
All are accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5, reporting out of closed session. Superintendent?
There's no action to report out of closed session.
Thank you. Item 6, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Huey. Superintendent?
Mr. Melajor?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Huey?
Aye.
Miss Larrett?
Aye.
Miss Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right. I understand we do not have any special presentations today. Is that correct?
That's correct, not this meeting.
Okay. Jumping ahead to public comment. This is the period in the agenda that if any members of the public would like to make remarks to the board, although we do ask if you have items that you want to speak to that are on the agenda, either on consent, if it's on consent, let us know you would like it pulled, but other agendized items, you would provide the public comment at that point in time. So this would be public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Anybody online? Okay. Then we will go to,
Oh, there is one.
oh, there's one. Okay. Welcome. Welcome, Michelle.
Hey there, thank you so much for letting me talk. And I just wanted to start the night off by saying I just have feeling my mouth sounds voice sounds a little awkward. That is the reason. I wanted to address the board with a letter that I actually written several times before, and I had to revisit one letter that I wrote earlier on January 19th, 2023. And that was with my concern of the full day kindergarten schedule. As you know, that we are all on that full day schedule, and I do enjoy having a longer day with my students. However, my concern, and this was my concern back in January after speaking with former colleagues, is that the length of the school day is just very long, and it's a very long day for kindergartners. They are exhausted. We have behaviors by the end of the day. And the longer day also has brought challenges with traffic to our school site. And from what I hear with other colleagues, there's traffic issues at a lot of elementary schools. And so I am with students until 15 minutes after they've been dismissed. And a lot of teachers, we are volunteering our additional time to help with traffic and keeping students and families safe. And just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board with having the same start and end time. That has been a big issue with a lot of sites. And then in addition to using that extra time for with traffic, we're losing prep time because of staying after. But we also just don't have enough prep time. I have 2 half-hour times during the week to prep art and different activities. I'm trying to prep during my lunch and recess, and then I bring things home in the evening. We just do not have enough prep time. We also have very large class sizes. I would love to see a smaller class size of a hard cap, not this average cap of 24. And then being able to have a smaller class would allow me to incorporate more meaningful letters, small group instruction. I know the district is pushing for letters and Haggerty and different new programs, but it's very difficult to do that in a large classroom. So I urge the board to come out and visit our site, any site after school, and look at the traffic, and come visit our large classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. All right, that takes us to item 9, reports of district organizations. Student Advisory Board.
Yeah, we have a really quick report. We have our next meeting on October 4th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the Cordova Lane Center, and we look forward to welcoming all SAB members there. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, California School Employees Association. Welcome.
Hello, members of the board. Rob got called out on feds, so I'm here to report for him. CSCA has approved their proposed openers, and it will be on the agenda for the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Folsom Cordova Education Association. Welcome.
Hello. Tony Ruiz. I am a 19-year veteran of this district. This is actually my 20th year teaching, which, if you think about it, makes me feel really old. And I'm here tonight, first, former Cordova High School teacher, current Vista Del Lago teacher, and most importantly, member at large for grades 9 through 12 for FCEA. Our president and our executive officer are at the Region 2 Leadership Conference, so I will be presenting our report. And our report tonight is regarding our response to the previous district compensation offer of September 13th. Let's see how this works. Yay, okay. As is said by many people, budgets show what an organization values. And what I can tell you is that the folks behind me and the folks that are watching this meeting tonight are feeling that value. And when I say they are feeling that value, they are feeling the lack of that value. Now, some things that we all know, but let's just go over it. We acknowledge that, the current budget is built on conservative assumptions of enrollment and the South of 50 progress. As of the 17th of August, enrollment was at 20,798, which brings the ADA to 19,550, or 94%, using the district assumptions. If this enrollment increase holds, that would mean approximately an additional $2.1 million in ongoing funding for the 23-24 year, which would bring the total LCFF funding to about $236 million. For August, just based on August of this year, we're currently running at 95.8% ADA, which is higher than the 94%. Now, I will admit, even as long as I've been in FCA and as long as I've been in this district, some of these numbers, when I see a graph like this, it kind of makes my head hurt. But then I sat down and I dug into it. The assumptions that we always have are just those. They are assumptions. They change with the data. This was a slide that was shared by the district in their budget presentation to show the difference between enrollment and attendance. However, you see that number right there, 20,526. We are already over that number. However, if you look at say the estimates for 24-25 and 25-26, those ADA percentages are 95%, not 94. Especially when we're running currently at 95.7. Now, will it stay that way the whole year? Of course not. But if you go back to, say, our previous years, in 22-23, we were at 95.6%. 21-22, we were at 97.5%. But we're estimating but what the numbers that FCUSD is calculating at is 94, even though pre-COVID enrollment was at 95.8. We are already almost 300 more enrolled than pre-COVID. And even for August, we're sitting at 95.8%. Now, what does all that mean? FCUSD is slated to receive about $16 million more funding, ongoing funding. You can see the difference, how it jumps up. The 23-24 budget number is huge. And the funding is calculated at 94%, which is an increase of 79 from the previous graph created over the summer. And if the increase holds, again, 2.1 million more. If attendance levels rebound closer to pre-COVID levels, which they already are, more money. So, with the money situation, it's clearly looking good. So why are we here? Because it's what's happening with that money that is the issue. And that's why we're where we are and why we're feeling what we're feeling. As a percentage of the district's total yearly spending, this year, 23-24, FCEA unit salaries are projected to drop to less than 36%. That trend is down. CTA recommends that districts spend at least 40% of their budget on unit salaries in order to maintain full staffing and decrease turnover. So not only are we not at 40, but we keep moving farther away from 40. And you're spending less on salaries this year in comparison to 22-23. Why? Veteran teachers are leaving and being replaced by interns, or in some cases, not being replaced at all. Now, how do teachers feel right now? We all know that this is a very difficult time in education. Teachers are facing more scrutiny, question more and more how we do our jobs. And over the last several years, what have we agreed to? We've agreed to do more than what is usually asked of us. We've soldiered through. A survey conducted in the first part of 2022 paints a picture of a disillusioned and exhausted workforce. And I think what's important is that there's a lot of teachers that are saying that they wouldn't likely advise their younger self to go into this career. All right? We continue to, but we are dedicated. We continue to soldier through. We're working harder than we ever have. Is it too much to ask that we feel that value? We're not asking for the moon. If we received 100% of the increase, which we would never even ask for to begin with, would be nice, but we're not gonna ask for it. That would be a 16.6% raise. And if the district only spent 40% of this new ongoing money on FCEA salaries, it would represent a 6.7 increase. 6.7, not 2. When we see 2, you wonder why we're mad, why we're feeling disillusioned, why we feel undervalued. This is especially sad considering that the district's big theme this year is to recruit, train, and retain. So let's see how that's going. Actually, hiring has been very good. Are there too many temps? Yes. All right. But look at how many people are not just retiring, but resigning. Why are they doing that? Is it because they don't love this district? I guarantee you that is not the case. Training. A lot of things getting thrown at us in terms of training. The 4C training for school culture and equity practices, the expanded coaching cadre. Great, these are all wonderful things. The problem is that when teachers don't feel valued, you know what they do? They take that knowledge and they go to another district. And as for retention, well, 24 hours after we posted our survey to get our members' ideas, their feelings about the offers, 140 responses in 24 hours, and over 90% said no. When 90% of your certificated staff say no, that should mean something. Now, when we compare ourselves to other districts, and I will fully admit, I don't always understand what all these numbers mean. These are all of our surrounding districts. And yes, some of them are funded differently. They have different, unduplicated pupil count, different ADA, fine. But this is where our people are going. What's different? Well, I'll tell you one thing that's different. Administrator salaries are going up. In 23-24, FCUSD is spending $1.1 million more on administrators than last year. That information is as much for you as it is for them. $1.1 million. That curve is going up. Remember which direction our bar graphs were going? And that number is shocking considering when you look at where principal salaries are in relationship to our surrounding districts, we're in the top 3. Elementary school principals are second highest in the region. Folsom, Cordova, high school principals, third highest in the region. And so there's clearly value in administrators, but what about certificated staff? The ones, who work with the kids day in, day out, plan the lessons, do the assessments, act as teacher, mentor, social worker, all of those things in once. Look at where we start. We start near the bottom. That doesn't engender people to come here. As you go up in experience, do you go up that much in salary? Not even in the top 6. Step 10, bachelor's plus 60, still near the middle. Max earnings without a PhD, we're still not in the top 5. But our principals are. Compared to area districts, we spent a competitive portion of the budget on total salary and benefit costs. However, if you dig into the numbers, you realize that this was almost entirely due to increases in classified and administrator salaries, not FCA. And for the record, our classified folks deserve everything they get. So there is spending going on towards salary and benefits, but for some reason, FCA gets less. Now, whatever your intent, that intent is moot, and you know you have a PR problem and really disillusioned people, when on August 30th, FCUSD offers 2% to teachers. And within minutes, and that's not an exaggeration, literally within minutes, SAC-B reports that Sac City Unified teachers get a double-digit raise. Now, most people realize that our funding is different from Sac City's, but it's the optics of it. When you offer us 2 and neighboring districts get to 10, doesn't boost us up. And that's the worst part is that's not even the main problem. The main problem is that when you offer 2%, when everybody knows that an 8.22% COLA was given to schools, you know the message that it sends us? It sends us the message that the district gets this money and only offers us 24% of that. Is that all we're worth? Are we worth 24% of a cost of living adjustment? Other headlines. There's the 8.22%. Sac City, 10% ongoing across the board increase. Another 6% increase for staff who provide critical services like SPED teachers, nurses, social workers, school psychologists, an increase in substitute teacher pay to $355 a day. Natomas got 5.5% last year, got an additional 1% for professional development and a one-time payment for anti-racism and anti-bias training. 23-24, Natomas is getting another 5%, almost 11%. But we get 2. We all know that different districts are funded differently, but it doesn't boost morale when we see this and all we get is 2. A budget is more than just numbers on a page. It is our values. So my question becomes, what are our Folsom Cordova Unified School District's values? Increasing salaries doesn't fix everything, but failing to increase them almost guarantees future talent loss in the classroom. So as our president, Jeanette Sansenbach, said at the last board meeting, it's time to sharpen your pencils and it's time to try again. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Next, we have the Folsom Cordova Leadership Association. Welcome.
Thanks, Tony. I got to follow you.
Sorry, Peter.
Good evening, Dr. Plegan, President Reed, members of the board, and distinguished guests and colleagues. Tonight, I'd like to share with you how our FCLA leadership team has been deepening our PLC work implementing district change efforts, and supporting our school sites. And I'm going to have to use a sports analogy. I'm sure you can assume why. Like any great coach, Dr. Collegian and our executive cabinet has led the charge for taking an improvement science approach to our work. Why do we need to improve methods? During COVID, we are in a reactive mode much of the time, adjusting to constant changes in our county, state, or federal health regulations and requirements. Now that we are 3 years past distant learning, we're more committed than ever to supporting our students and staff in a post-COVID world. The Carnegie Foundation out of Stanford has developed and championed the improvement science to help educators and systems get better through forced improvement initiatives. Improvement science puts real problems of practice at the center and acknowledges the role systems play in determining outcomes. It respects and integrates the knowledge of educators, families, and students, recognizing that people closest to the work have important insight about how to improve our systems. So what kind of game scheme can you expect from this change in coaching philosophy, and what does it look like? Based on our empathy gathering from a variety of site staff, cabinet meetings have been redesigned using the 4 focus areas. 1, improving student growth and success. 2, partners with students, families, and our communities. 3, foster diverse, inclusive, and thriving working environments. And 4, optimizing systems and optimizing a culture of innovation. We're looking for the root cause of the system challenges, trying out more efficient ways to operate our schools and our districts. And we're clearly defining what success looks like in our changed efforts. Here's some examples of what the district changed ideas are. Our HR department identified recruiting and retaining classified and certificated staff as a major challenge to solve. They decided to try new system approaches by holding 3 different career fairs over the past 5 months, attracting possible candidates and hiring 158 new employees. Hiring is just the first step. You approved 2 new positions focused on retention and professional development for classified and certificated staff. Now our coordinator of PD and a coordinator of teacher induction are putting systems of support in place for our new teachers and offering more professional growth opportunities for our classified team. Our leadership team is providing more professional development for our FCUSD employees. That's for certificated, classified, and confidential. We're learning to practice the 6 principles of improvement science, which allow us to break down district silos and create more efficient district processes. We are providing APs meetings to build upon their administrators' resource of tools, and provide support for instructional leaders. We're improving student attendance, providing site support, and building emphasis on students, such as the 20-day challenge. Recently, FCLA invited new administrators to our district to meet and greet and to welcome them to our district, providing them with connections and letting them know the value that we have in each of them. Any great coach knows the success comes from ensuring that our leaders have the backing and the support they need to be successful. Each of the 36 schools and departments must feel valued. FCUSD is committed to improvement, FCLA is committed to improvement and sharing how our leaders are making a difference every day. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have the District English Learner Advisory Committee. Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Collegian, Superintendent, President Board Reed, members of the board, and my esteemed colleagues. Just a quick reminder that we have an upcoming Parent Summit. You received a flyer. There's also a link as well. And it's set, the Parent Summit is set for November 4th at Rancho Cordova Elementary. We'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 10, agenda consent. Are there any items that any of my colleagues would like to have pulled from the agenda consent? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
A motion.
Motion by Mr. Hui, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Laurent. Superintendent?
Yes. Mr. Mellinger?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Huey?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
I understand we do not have any introductions today, is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Item 11, all right, public hearing. Let's gavel into that. All right, this is a public hearing, Folsom Cordova Unified School District 2023-2024, proposed contract openers of common interest with California School Employees Association to the Board of Education. Superintendent.
Yes, this is Folsom Cordova Unified School District's opening sunshine proposal to open negotiations with our Classified School Employees Association. The three articles that we are asking to open are Article 10, compensation, Article 11, hours of employment, and Article 12, leaves.
Okay. Is there any public comment? All right, the board, we also have this on item 12, so we can discuss it when we get to the discussion action item. So is there anybody online who would like to speak? All right, so we will then close the public hearing. And we will enter into a public hearing on Folsom Cordova Unified School District 2023-2024 proposed contract openers of common interest with Folsom Cordova Education Association to the Board of Education. Superintendent.
Yes, this is Folsom Cordova Unified School District's opening proposal to negotiate with our Folsom Cordova Educational Association for 23-24. We are proposing to open 4 articles and 1 appendix. The articles are Article 8 on the work year, Article 12, teacher evaluations, Article 16, compensation, Article 19, miscellaneous provisions, and Appendix C, which are credits earned in intern programs.
All right, thank you. I assume that this is for public comment for this item. So Melanie Passavoy. Welcome.
Good evening, board. My name is Melanie Passavoy. I'm a math teacher at Folsom Middle School. This is my 16th year in the district and my 27th year teaching. So I've been at this a while. I spoke about a month ago on Zoom to, I think, a grand total of maybe like 10 people. And most of what I talked about was how we didn't need to start this year with compensation negotiations that had a lot of animosity, because we know you have the money and you know how we have the money, you know you have the money, and so we should just start out at a place that was reasonable. And I was pretty disappointed when I realized that we were offered 2%, which is well below every single inflation index that's out there. And so it was pretty demeaning and insulting to have to beg to even get above inflation. I should be home tonight. I should be trying to fulfill that elusive work-life balance, but instead I'm here because apparently this and all of my friends here in red is what has to happen to convince you that we are worthy of even a cost of living adjustment that is above the rate of inflation. I care about my ability to support my family. That should not be embarrassing. That should not be something I have to stand here and beg for to get back to a level where I feel like I can afford what I want at the grocery store and the gas station and sending my kid to college in a year. This is ridiculous. This is not how I should be spending my time. It seems like it's not about what I do in the classroom, how successful I am there, or how I support my students, or what clubs I run, or any of those things. It's about being here to show you that somehow being here matters more than being in my classroom doing my job. Because when we're here, we get more money. When we just do our job the way we're supposed to, right, and more than we're supposed to, we're treated to a 2% introductory offer when we know you had a lot more. You can do better. I'm a math teacher. Erase and try again.
Thank you. Is there any other individual who would like to speak? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Diana Zavoda, and I work at Mitchell Middle School. I'm a special education teacher, and I teach English. I stand in front of my students every day, and I talk to them. I don't like public speaking. I do not, but when I feel strongly about something, I feel I have to say it. Every day I teach my students that use a pencil. Use a pencil when you're writing. That way you can erase it if you happen to make a mistake. Well, my assumption is that the mistake was made at bargaining. I have a pencil if you would like to erase it and start again. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody online? No? All right, again, this will be on agenda item 12 as well. So hearing no other presenters, we will close the public hearing on this item. And that takes us to item 12, discussion action items. The first one is to accept Folsom Cordova Unified School District 2023-2024 proposed sunshine contract openers of common interest with California School Employees Association to the Board of Education. Superintendent.
Yes, this is the board's action in improving the openers with CSEA on the 3 articles mentioned earlier.
Okay. Start with any questions from the board. No? All right. We'll open it for public comment. Online. All right, back to the board. Is there a motion to accept the opening contract openers for CSEA?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Hui. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Clark. Superintendent.
Mr. Melajor,
Abstain.
Mr. Merrill,
Abstain.
Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Hui,
Aye.
Ms. Larrett,
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Aye.
Mr. Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right. Next one is to accept the Folsom Cordova Unified School District 2023-2024 proposed sunshine contract openers of common interest with the Folsom Cordova Education Association to the Board of Education. Superintendent.
Yes, this is the board's action in approving the openers with Folsom Cordova Education Association on the 4 articles previously mentioned, as well as Appendix C.
Okay, any questions from the board? From the audience? Online? All right. Back to the board. Is there a motion to accept the contract openers?
Let's move it.
Okay, motion by Mr. Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Lofthouse. Superintendent.
Mr. Melajor,
Aye.
Mr. Merrill,
Aye.
Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Hui,
Aye.
Ms. Larrett,
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Aye.
Mr. Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right, that takes us to item C, approve revised board policy 5131.8, mobile communication devices. Superintendent.
Yes, the policy that we're bringing before you was actually reviewed by the board and revised at the end of last school year. And we realized at the beginning of the school year, we had some contradictory language unintentionally in our policy that we cleaned up. And we reviewed this with our board policy subcommittee at our September 11th meeting. So if we can bring up the revised policy, Ms. Dagnall. We had a contradiction in the piece that students in TK through 8 may not use cell phones, and then the part that's the contradictory part is the students in 6-8. So we cleaned it up in the green paragraph where it says students in grades TK through 8 may not use cell phones, smartphones, smartwatches, or other mobile communication devices once they've entered campus for the instructional day. We did accidentally leave out another sentence from the first paragraph that was struck in red, which we want to add back in, and that didn't come up until after our policy subcommittee. So the sentence is the second sentence in that red paragraph. Maybe you can highlight that with your cursor. Devices must be turned off and placed out of sight during the school day. Students who need to call parents may use cell phones located in the administrative office. That piece we didn't want struck. So we want to put that back into that first paragraph in green, right before that second sentence where it says students in grades K through 8. I'm sorry that's so confusing and convoluted, but it's the language that was there before. And then the second paragraph in green gives our site administrators the authority to use any product or policy that they feel would assist in successfully implementing the restrictions of mobile communication devices on campus. And we gave examples of what that could be, such as the classroom cell phone garages, yonder bags, cell phone pocket charts. So the 2 paragraphs in green, along with the 2 sentences that we had lined out initially in that red paragraph, would be the changes we're asking the board to approve tonight.
So let me read the first green paragraph, if I understand the way that you're describing it, just so everybody's on the same page. It would read, students in grades TK through 8 may not use cell phones, smartphones, smartwatches, or other mobile communication devices once they have entered campus for the instructional day. Devices must be turned off and placed out of sight during the school day. Students who need to call parents may use phones located in the administrative office. Students in grades 6 through 8 may resume the use of their mobile communication devices after the last period of the day and during after-school extracurricular and sporting activities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yes.
Personally, I am for the cell phone regulation. I think it'll increase student attentivity in class, but I don't want teachers to be burdened with like another task, like a daily task of them having to deal with students who are, disobeying the rules. So I just want to make sure that teachers, if they choose not to follow these new regulations, that they won't be like held accountable for in class. Like if an assistant principal comes in and sees a student on his phone, I don't want the teacher to be punished for that, for say, if that teacher didn't, like, has bigger fish to fry, if they don't want to follow that rule, like, specifically, or if they disagree with it at all. So I just don't want the teachers to be held accountable for that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
So I want to bring up the financial aspect of this. Yonder bags, as we have highlighted it in this policy, they cost $15 to $30 annually per student. And with a district of 20,000 students, that is an annual fee of $300,000 to $600,000 a year. And if this district is really concerned about money and where the district is putting it, as seen with many of these people in this room, this is clearly not a long-term economically viable solution. Yonder bags criminalize student behavior, and it shows a lack of real engagement with these parents who are clearly upset with this policy, and it does not show real support for the students. It's a cheap cop-out to control phone usage. And we should direct our efforts into helping students and teachers control issues behind phone use and the underlying problems behind it. So I don't see this as a viable policy unless we exclude the yonder bag clause. And I do encourage this board to find alternative solutions that aren't as punitive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, or actually, questions?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Clark.
What they said, actually, they took the words right out of my mouth. Here's my concern. And I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking about, like, Mitchell and Mills that I visited. And, last meeting we talked about, how kids have their phones in the yonder bags, and after school they were, they go up front, unlock them. I'm just kind of curious, how many of them use their yonder bags? What's the percentage of the yonder bags being used? Because quite honestly, after school, and I stood outside of Mills, these kids were literally walking out of class with their phone to their ear. So that means to tell me that they're not using the yonder bags. And then when we had this conversation, and I voted no, just for the record, there was no talk about yonder bags. It just kind of snuck up on us and said, oh, we're going to use yonder bags. And I'm thinking, okay, was that something that maybe I fell asleep on or we missed? So wouldn't it be better, and I'm looking at this thing, devices may be turned off and placed out of sight during the school day. Students who need to call parents may use phones located in the administrative office. A lot of our kids they're not using their cell phones. And true to what you said, Mr. President, when you and Board Member Laird went to visit schools, they're not using their phones, but they do have their phones on them and they don't have them in yonder bags. Now, another thing, these kids are smart. They are very tech savvy and they know how to get those phones out of the yonder bag. I'll make a point to you. I'm not gonna say who it is, but I have a cousin that goes to Mills. He showed me how to get that phone out and I was amazed. And it's like, okay, so like our two student board members said, we literally wasted money on these yonder bags. Now, like I said before, wouldn't it have been much better if we put this policy in place? Tell them, hey, turn your phones off, put them in your backpack. If you bring them out, we'll take them from you. Or do we keep pushing this yonder bag thing? And I'm just wondering how many of those yonder bags are being damaged? Have we got a report on that at all? So is that maybe something we can look into? Because like I said, how much does it cost to replace those puppies?
$800,000 to $600,000 a year.
I can think of other places where that money can go to, just to be honest. So that's just my comment for that. You know, when it comes down to it, I don't know if this is a action item or not. But
it is.
Okay, well, you probably know how I'm gonna go with it then, but I'm done with it. Thank you, sir.
Superintendent, were you?
Yeah, we will be bringing data back to the board on the implementation of the policy and yonder bag and so forth at the middle school level, because that's where the major change has happened with the restrictions. Dr. Huber will be bringing that data forward late fall.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have a couple of questions and comments. One, from the beginning, I think that I made it very clear how I felt about the lack of plan for implementation of this policy. I was shocked when I went to Folsom High School back to school night, and they don't allow phones. They all have pocket charts. My child does not have her phone on her during class. And so going from that to knowing that we spent $85,000 on something that we won't have record until later, probably I'd say the end of the year is when we'll find out how many have actually been damaged. For me, putting the name of a device that is going to protect this policy, I'm not okay with that. There's other opportunities and options, and I think leaving out a specific name of a product that definitely did a good job selling itself, but I just don't think that it's doing what we want it to do. Phones are away. Kids don't have them out during class as much. There is more involvement in classroom discussion, but it's not the yonder bags. It's the teachers that are probably putting in the hard work and making sure that that policy is upheld without any plan for that. So again, I do not agree with listing a specific product that we have no data on how it's working in the policy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I have a question, Dr. Collegian. If we took out that second green paragraph, this is a board policy. Site administration and district administration would be in charge of implementing that policy. If we took out that second paragraph, does it take away your ability to use items like yonder bags?
Well, I think the whole purpose of adding that paragraph in was to make it specific that our site administrators do have the authority to use what tools they feel would be helpful to them to implement this policy at the middle school level. Typically, you would get into the detail of how you implement a policy in an administrative regulation. And we've talked about creating an administrative regulation after we've implemented the policy for a year. So in the meantime, this paragraph gives a little bit more support to our site administrators to use the tools they feel would help them in implementing this policy. So that was the reason for adding it here. But you're right, typically we get into the details and the specifics of the how in an administrative regulation.
And I'm wondering then, if we left it in all but that last sentence, if people aren't comfortable with having yonder bags, the actual item in a board policy, do you feel like that would take away the intent of that paragraph if the last sentence wasn't part of it?
I think it would still get the intent across and give the administrators the support that they would need.
I mean, if my colleagues are comfortable with it, I would, I'd be very comfortable just taking out that last sentence. Still gives site administration as well as district administration the authority to implement the policies that the board makes. So I think.
I actually agree with Board Member Lofthouse, and I should have caught that earlier. We shouldn't be putting brand names into board policy. I mean, one option is to do what Board Member Hui suggests, which is delete the second or the last sentence of that paragraph. The other option is to describe it rather than using the name yonder bags. You could say secured bags. Which isn't a product, it's just a way to describe it. So I think either way potentially works, but
yeah, I would be fine with that change. I would encourage some of my colleagues to check out Instagram and check out some of the pages that are posted that are there specifically for students to post fights on there. And there's one specifically to Mills, and if you go and you look at the content of it, it's now just reposting off of other pages that's actually not events that are actually happening at their location. So I know that we're talking specifically in a classroom, but I think we have to also look beyond that, what's happening out during the lunch period, what's happening out in between the passing periods and things like that. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, when there's a lot of passion that's kind of happening in that and things like that, the temptation to pull out a phone if it's not in a secured bag, I think is definitely a lot more tendency to do that and try to capture that moment and post it. And I've been monitoring that content for the last couple months and spoken with the principal there. Hey, what is this content? Hey, that's actually something from last year. So there's no content for them to actually be putting out there. So I think that while we're talking specifically in the classrooms, we're also looking at the other portions of the day that we're also trying to kind of monitor as well. So, but I would be fine with changing that last line.
so I guess, is there a consensus of the board to delete the last sentence or change the yonder bag reference to something else?
I think the problem with leaving that last line at all is it says these items may include. So it's still up for kind of, as a reader, it may or may not include that. So I think that if you leave the word may, it still leaves it open for way too much. It's just not clear. So,
I mean, maybe the first line is already powerful enough to say that they have the authority to use any product or policy, and we don't have to really list it out past that point.
Okay, so is there
Mr. President, before you, I just have a comment about the Instagram thing. If what Board Clerk Laird is saying is that kids are recording fights at school on their phone and they're putting it on Instagram, are they putting it under a different name, or are they and I'm going to be totally honest with you, I'm old school, I don't have Instagram. I need Instagram. I don't know, like I said, years ago, my daughter set up my Facebook, so that's how prehistoric I am. But I'm just kind of curious that if a kid is recording a fight on their phone and they're using their Instagram, or are they using another Instagram? I mean, how is that working?
I think there's a little bit of both. Some of them, it's hard to tell the names, like of who the actual student is, because they'll use like different handle names. I mean, I'm sure the students could probably speak to that a
could
little
we
better.
find out who that kid is posting it?
You can't always find out.
You can't, so there's no way.
So at times when I've had to dig down that hole of verifying who is, you can go through the route of actually contacting Instagram and they can do that, but it's an extremely long process.
Yeah, I could imagine. Okay, I'm just asking because, like I said, I don't know a darn thing about Instagram, and I don't want to learn about Instagram. But yeah, I was just curious about that and how that may work. If a student is recording a fight, I would think that somebody out there might say something.
Well, and I think,
I mean, don't you think?
I think
that-
there's probably also new avenues of where they're posting these things. So,
Oh, okay.
So, I'm not as ancient as you, but Instagram is also becoming the old news. So
Okay.
I think there are other
There's new
avenues
things.
of delivering information that kids are using.
I think many, many years ago, there was a workshop, I think, out at Folsom Middle that they did on social media and the new things. Is that any way possible we can try to bring that back so maybe an old guy like me can learn a little something, or, you know?
I know the gentleman who did that no longer works for where he was working. So he was not available anymore, but I'm sure there's other people out there.
Well, let's find that out so I can.
And that goes back to my original request, was making sure that we're educating our students
Absolutely.
and parents on the actual use of cell phones and the problem with it, rather
Got
than
it.
just locking them up.
And we had that presentation last year, and we have it on the schedule this year too.
Oh, okay, good.
We'll get
Thank
the
you.
date to you, to all of you.
All right. That's it.
All right, well, before we go to public comments, so the public will know exactly what they're commenting on, is there a consensus to delete the last sentence in the second green paragraph?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, let's.
Board President, I just want to add consensus to delete the last sentence, as well as add the 2 sentences from that first paragraph that's scratched out.
Right, is there,
Just to clarify that's.
Was there a consensus to add the 2 sentences, as, I guess I had read that paragraph with those 2 sentences, and that the superintendent indicated were accidentally deleted? All right, let's go out to public comment, and then we can bring it back for any other questions or final comments. Is there any public comment on this item? Online? Oh, we got one.
Hi, I'm Annie Eagles. I work at Folsom Middle School, longtime listener. Mom of one of the middle schoolers. My kid doesn't have a cell phone because I'm mean. And so I don't really have that as a parent. But as a teacher, I would definitely say our campus is phenomenally awesome. I would say walking through campus during lunchtime and watching the kids interact with each other and talking, and even the lunchroom is louder because they're talking. And I'm sad to say Mr. Gomez is leaving us, but he plays music for our 6th and 7th graders. There's spherical devices all over the place, even oblongy ones, so football's going places. But it's just so awesome. And I'd say even as a PE teacher, I don't have the cell phone issue necessarily in my class, but in the locker room, that was gross. But it's just not an issue. And I don't know if it's necessarily the yonder portion of that, but we had no backup last year. So we couldn't confiscate cell phones. We had no backbone. We had nothing. So kids were everywhere and taking videos and taking pictures, and it didn't really matter because we as a teacher had nothing that we could do about it. So the yonder has helped Folsom Middle School because all of a sudden we have a backbone. All of a sudden, if we see a cell phone, go to the office. We don't have any other issues other than go to the bloody office. And that's what we've been told by all of our admin. If you see a cell phone, earpods, anything, go to the office. And that has just been amazing. So I don't know about yonder, I don't know about whatever, but boo hiss on cell phones because they suck. So whatever we can do about that would be amazing. Thank you.
I have to admit, it was much more dramatic with the pencil in there. Any other comments from, yes?
I was just gonna say, I think you're asking the wrong board member questions about cell phones and social media when you probably have two experts sitting right next to you. Not that they're, using it in any, terrible way, but I'm sure they know all the ins and outs and can school everyone on the board about.
Honestly, I think I asked Van if he would hook me up on Instagram,
Go.
so that may happen.
And then he has to tell you about TikTok too.
Know nothing about it.
Yeah, well, there you go. Anyways, that was.
All right, online, any comments? Okay, all right. Back to the board for questions or comments before we see if there's a motion in a second.
Just to clarify, are we voting to approve this as it is right now, or with the sentence deleted? Are we?
Yeah, we would be, that was why I was seeking the consensus. So what we would be voting on would be the deletion of the two paragraphs. In the first green paragraph, the addition of the two sentences as it was read. And then in the second paragraph, it would be the deletion of the last sentence.
So we're pretending that all that is on the board right now?
Correct.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Okay, I will make a couple of observations from what has been told to me. One was at one of the middle school campuses where unfortunately, when students get in fights, they sometimes, do so because they're being filmed. And they play for the camera. And at one of the middle schools this year, after a fight, the student who started the fight, immediately when the fight ended and they were pulled apart, said, "Who's got the video?" And nobody had the video. That was a major change. And if you think about it, while, obviously fights happen, they did in the 1980s, but if we can disincentivize fights because the cell phones are not accessible, then that's a good thing. As to, how much it costs, I think we all agree that it was a sizable sum. It was, from what I understand, Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a year-by-year decision. That was, at least this year, an experiment, and the experiment was requested by the principals of the middle school sites,
Yes,
correct?
and also Kinney High School and Prospect Community Day wanted to pilot.
Okay.
Yeah, the Yonder Bag.
So,
It's a year-
so as of
year
right
by
now,
year.
it's basically a pilot year, and then we'll decide if we decide to continue, what that would look like.
Yes.
And would that be something that the board would have a say on, or will that be something that would be done administratively, or?
We can bring that back as part of the administrative regulation or in the board, well, we just struck that line in the board policy, but, how we implement it, our hope is that over time, we won't need those locking bags anymore. With this year's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, the incoming 6th graders were following the elementary policy. So that wasn't a major change.
Right.
The 7th and 8th graders this year, had access to their cell phones during the day and at breaks and lunchtime. So that's why our principals asked for a little bit more leverage, for helping and making it standardized and consistent across all of our middle schools and our continuation high school, community day school.
That's a good point. I mean, we don't use Yonder bags in elementary school, and we don't have an issue because any student who brings a cell phone has to be turned off in the bottom of their bag and not accessed, and they follow the policy. So even in a worst-case scenario, if we did keep the Yonder bag after next year, not the current school year, after the next school year, there won't be a single student in middle school who ever knew not having cell phones.
If they're a Folsom Cordova student.
If they're a
with
Folsom,
us from
if they're a Folsom
elementary,
Cordova
yes.
student.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so I already asked if there was any questions. So I guess we'll go for adoption. Is there a motion to approve the mobile communication device revisions? And that would include deleting the 2 top paragraphs, inserting the 2 missing sentences as was read earlier into the first paragraph, and deleting the last sentence in the second green paragraph.
I'll move.
A second.
Who made the motion?
I'll move.
Okay. Motion by Board Member Merrill and seconded by Board Member Hui. Superintendent?
Yes. Mr. Mellinger?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
No.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
No.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that takes us to item 13, discussion. First item is the 2023-2024 site funding for students. Superintendent.
Yes, this information is coming to us tonight from our Curriculum and Instruction Department, reporting out how our schools are using their supplemental funding, which has a new model of distribution of how it's distributed to our sites, how those funds are reviewed by school site councils, which is made up of our staff, our parents, and our leadership, and how those dollars are best supporting the students at each of those schools that are receiving the funds. So we welcome Angie Carlamagno and Lori Emmington to the podium to share a presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Kaligian, board members, teachers. We are sharing how sites are using supplemental funding this evening to support teaching and learning. So to understand supplemental funding, we need to take a step back and talk about how school sites are funded through the general fund. The general fund is a base level of funding using our unrestricted general fund dollars. The budget book that you all received this evening, it's rather large, but I love that there's student artwork in it, illustrates the allocations of these unrestricted general fund dollars. The general fund allocations rely on formulas to ensure all sites have appropriate certificated and classified staffing. Base funding includes, but is not limited to, allocations for things such as site supervision, school clerical and health clerk personnel, counselors and paraeducators in TK and kindergarten. So think of the base funding as the cake, and the supplemental funding, that extra additional funding for sites based on need, as the icing on the cake. And thank you, Elena Cabrera, for that lovely, she always uses that example, and I like that. But additional staffing and site allocations may occur through these supplemental and other categorical funds. These may be ongoing or one-time pots of money, and these funds are in excess to the general fund dollars and should be directed toward identified student populations that need extra resources for success, such as students with disabilities, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, English language learners, and foster youth. So some examples of additional funding in FCUSD are listed above and on this slide. And as I said earlier, some of these funding sources are one-time pots of money, such as our learning recovery funds, and some pots are ongoing based on site needs, such as Title I funding. It's also important to mention the community schools funding, which is not listed up here. It's also additional in nature as well. And as you know, 6 Rancho Cordova schools receive $7.6 million over the next 5 years. For the 23-24 fiscal year, $1.6 million has been directed to Cordova Meadows, Cordova Villa, Rancho Cordova Elementary, White Rock, Williamson, and Mills Middle School. Those were our community schools grant awardees. We won't get into the particulars about community school funding tonight, but it's important to mention this in relation to additional funding for schools. Yes. For the 23-24 school year, we have changed how we allocate site supplemental funding. Of course, things like Title I has always been allocated to sites, but supplemental funding such as learning recovery, Comprehensive support and improvement and additional targeted support and improvement was historically directed by district, and now it has been redirected to the sites based on their unduplicated pupil percentage. So the UPP is determined by families who qualify as socioeconomically disadvantaged, English learner, or foster youth status. If a student falls into more than one of those categories, they are only counted one time. So in total, Rancho Cordova Title I schools were allocated approximately $3.2 million. And Folsom schools, along with Riverview and Mather Heights, who are not Title I schools, were allocated approximately $300,000. Since there are a lot of dollars being directed to the sites gather input from staff members and from staff and members of their school site council. A school sites council's voting body is comprised of 30% teachers, 50% parents and community members, and 10% classified and the principal. Ultimately, it will be the school sites councils who approve how the supplemental dollars are spent after educational partner feedback has been reviewed. Educational partners include parents, site staff, bargaining units, and students. So I'd like to take a moment to note that last year, we had a limited time window for a significant change in our practice. We gathered as much feedback as possible within that quick turnaround time for hiring staff. We value the voice of our stakeholders and will engage them along the way throughout this school year with needs assessments to inform decisions about the supplemental funding for the 24-25 school year. Here's a snapshot of our district-provided additional spending. All sites received intervention teachers at the elementary level, bilingual aid hours, school clerk hours, health assistant hours, and parent coordinator hours. Assistant principals are added based on a site's UPP count, and instructional coaches are at all Title I sites in elementary.
I get a slide now. Secondary additional spending. We have one middle school that has an intervention teacher, but we have all three of our Title I schools have added assistant principals to their team. We have instructional coaches at Cordova High School, Mitchell and Mills, and we also have them at Kinney, Sutter Middle, and Folsom Middle. We have additional school clerk at all sites, and we have additional counselors at our Title I schools and additional bilingual aid hours at the sites on the slide, and additional health assistant hours at all sites.
We're gonna Lori and I will now do a quick whip through of our sites, and we will highlight the purchases that the sites have determined. So this slide here encompasses all elementary non-Title I sites, their supplemental spending. So, and again, there were $300,000 in site supplemental was spent for Folsom, Riverview STEM Academy, and Mather Heights. So we organized these supports in this slide deck by teaching and learning, social emotional supports, and family engagement. So the supports range here from extra paraprofessional time to instructional supplies and teacher PD. And then I'm gonna go in depth on our Title I sites. So highlights for Cordova Gardens include intervention teacher support, teacher release for STEAM, professional development, and Special Friends, which is a primary intervention program for social emotional skill building for some of our youngest learners on campus. Highlights for Cordova Meadows include a class size reduction teacher in the intermediate grades, so they have lower class sizes below the 1:34 ratio. They also invested in professional development and assembly support, among other things. Highlights for Cordova Villa include behavior specialist support. They also purchased a Spanish, science, and art teacher. And they offer a wheel of prep to students so that teachers can have guided PLC work time with the site's instructional coach. So these teachers are also shared with Williamson Elementary, who also offers the same support for teachers and students. Navigator has added intervention support, some of their highlights around supplies and tech equipment. Highlights for Peter J. Shields include class size reduction teacher, extra bilingual aid hours, and teacher release for PD. Highlights for Rancho Cordova Elementary include intervention and behaviorist support, along with money for supplies and teacher PD. Highlights for Williamson include extra paraprofessional hours, that wheel of prep that I spoke about earlier in relation to Villa, and then money for professional development. And then lastly, highlights for White Rock include intervention support, special friends, and money for classified and certificated PD.
All right, for Cordova High School, I want to point out their instructional coaches, they have 2 instructional coaches that are both on partial release specifically for math. They really want to bolster their instruction in their math classrooms. They also have a general instructional coach who is supporting all content areas. They have reduced class sizes. Again, I think it's mostly math classes. They have a SPED teacher on release. They have quite a high caseload of special education students with IEPs, and so they have actually released a teacher who is very helpful and supportive with those IEPs, with the IA scheduling, and various other opportunities that they didn't have before in their SPED classes. They also have a late night library where they have certificated staff providing very engaging tutoring supports. They have increased their counseling ratio with this money. They've provided some release for an SEL teacher who focuses only on PBIS and SEL supports on campus. They have added an assistant principal and campus monitors for campus safety and an attendance specialist for family engagement. At Mills Middle School, they also have 2 instructional coaches that support instruction in the classroom. They have added EL support with teachers and BIAs. They have engaged in some excellent professional development around culture and climate, around campus safety, and around improvement around professional learning communities. They too have added an assistant principal and campus monitors, extra clerical, and an attendance specialist. At Mitchell Middle School, again, an instructional coach, some of the same supports you've seen at the other schools, a counselor, they have an SEL release as well, assistant principal and campus monitors, and a parent coordinator and extra clerical. And then for Folsom Secondary Schools, Folsom High School has partial release for intervention teacher. We have instructional coaches at the middle schools. EL supports at Folsom High, Folsom Middle, and Sutter Middle. Vista Del Lago chose to spend their supplemental on professional development and after-school tutoring. Sutter Middle School added counselor hours to their team and health office support at several schools. Campus monitors at Sutter Middle and a parent coordinator at Folsom Middle, and then extra clerical at Folsom Vista, Folsom Middle, and Sutter Middle. And then at Kinney Prospect and Walnut Wood, Kinney added some teachers, both at Kinney and at Prospect, an instructional coach at Kinney, EL support at Kinney, restorative practices at Prospect, and clubs and extracurriculars at Kinney, and then extra clerical at Kinney. And that is it. Any questions?
All right, questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Clark.
Okay, so let's go to page 4.
I'm going to let Angie step in. I don't see numbers, so. Want me to go back?
Page 4.
Dr. Clark, tell me when to stop.
Go backwards. Go back.
Go backwards. 6, 5, 4. One more.
Oh,
There you go.
Sorry, Mr. Reed's head was in the
So
way.
we were talking about the different pots, and I think out of one of them, you had learning recovery funds, which is one time.
Yes, that
So what
is.
happens after that one-time funding? Where does that?
I haven't been in my job long enough to know that. That will go through 27, 28, but from my understanding, there are different pots of, or there's different monies that are block grants that are given to districts during different times of need.
So do you think that learning recovery fund will go beyond, what'd you say, 25, 26? Or 24?
27, 28.
27,
No.
28, will it go beyond that? It won't?
No,
It'll
it
stop
ends
there?
then.
By then, okay. I want a clarification on that, thank you.
Year after year, but they must all be used.
Okay. And then on page 6, your school site council. I'm assuming that they meet, what, every month, every other week? When do they meet?
School site councils, the term in the law is regularly, meet regularly. If you map out the school year, technically we're at about 9 months-ish, maybe 10 months, but we'll say 9 because they're partial months. And you think about months like May and December where principals and staff and parents are, committed to other obligations. It's normal to see about 3 to 6 meetings a year.
Okay.
And there's a schedule of the timeline of the sort of topics that should be discussed.
And I'm assuming they've had a meeting already this year?
They have.
Okay. All right, I'm going somewhere with this, so be patient with me. So I was looking at the elementary schools, and most of them have, and I love this, most of them have extra pay for our teachers and subs. And I'm just kind of curious of how that funding works for them, for that extra pay.
Sure.
But what caught me was White Rock Elementary. They were the only ones that had extra pay for classified. Is there a reason? Is that just something they decided on?
You know-
and the other ones didn't?
Right. So in gathering their stakeholder input, they realized that they needed some training and I believe it was for yard supervisors for safety on campus. And so also our instructional assistants are another area in which they were focusing on training for those instructional assistants. But I can get the exact trainings and get those to you.
Okay. Well, I wasn't stuck on the training. I was stuck on the extra pay.
Right.
On that. So I'm just wondering how that would transpire moving forward. And then, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, supplemental pay goes away for middle schools next year? Or is that ongoing?
It would depend on their UPP count. So every year we do our
It doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away?
It will adjust every year based off of the prior year unduplicated pupil number at each school site. So this is an ongoing funding source to support supplemental services. So these are supposed to be targeting unduplicated students for ongoing purposes to support the needs of those students at all of our sites.
Okay. All right. And then I was looking, and it caught my curiosity about field trips. Are they educational? Are they fun?
Both. So, yes. So when a teacher puts in for a field trip, we make sure that it's connected to state standards. But obviously, there's a fun component to going outside of the classroom to do learning in the community. And so it's a great opportunity. And some of our sites need extra funds to be able to support students that might not be able to have the activity fee or transportation fees paid for.
Okay, you said, repeat that about the transportation fees.
Right. So there's transportation fees from busing, and then we also have activity fees for entrance. So say a student's class is going to Fog Willow Farm, they may charge about $5 or so for each student for entry into the program.
What farm was that?
Fog Willow Farm.
Okay, is that like the pumpkin patch thing?
There is a pumpkin patch
Because I'm going to throw
there.
something at you real quick. I had got an email from, good golly, Cordova Gardens. And they said that that Fog Willow, and I'm glad you brought that up, wouldn't accept Title I funds. So they were kind of scrambling to make sure that their kids had the opportunity to go, even so far that they reached out to me, which I actually am going to cover their transportation costs.
I don't know how
But-
Fog Willow would, I'm not sure how Fog Willow would know where the
Well, that's the email I got, and I can share it with you, but I'm just trying to bring up a point that, you know, I don't know if some of these places are taking the funding so these kids can go,
I
albeit
think
whether
there
it's-
is confusion on that. So under Title I, we're not allowed to pay for certain activities, and so.
That's why it was mentioned the education or
but-
fund component of it.
Right, but the supplemental funds could be used for that. And so that's the idea. We've actually changed how the sites are allocated their resources so that now that they have supplemental funds, they can access those dollars. So what we do is we actually, the team, Elena, and several of the fiscal team members have worked so that the budget that are the Title I dollars, we specifically try to push in activities and expenditures that are allowable under Title I first, and then leave the supplemental dollars, which have more flexibility left, so that activities such as that are available to our sites. So if there's a site with that concern, the best solution would be to send that over to us, because we can solve that very quickly for them.
Okay, because, yeah, I'm reading it. We found out that we could not use Title I funds at Fog Willow.
That's exactly right. And so we would use supplemental dollars instead. So those sites have supplemental dollars, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've allocated. Now, a lot of it's for staff, but we hopefully have ensured that they've kept some of those dollars available for these types of activities. That's the whole purpose of this allocation. So we're actually very excited about this, because I think you're going to see that there's going to be a lot more flexibility and service happening out at the campuses. So we're very excited.
All right.
And also, the city of Rancho Cordova also has a field trip bucket that they also contribute as well for field trips specifically.
Through Measure H, is that?
Oh, is it through Measure H? Okay. Well, I mean, they actually emailed me. It kind of seemed that they were in dire straits.
Yeah,
so-
no, I wish they reached out to us, because we would have solved that very quickly for them.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, other questions?
I just had a quick question. Is there an opportunity for the principals to kind of communicate what's working really well at the schools and what maybe isn't working well, so the following years they can kind of pull
Yes.
from what's working?
Yes, we've asked them to measure effectiveness of everything that they're putting into place.
Awesome.
Board Member Hui?
Yeah, a couple questions and then a couple comments, if that's all right, if I do those now. One would be, I guess that's a lot of positions, new positions on here. I know hiring in general has been difficult. Do you have a sense of where schools are in terms of hiring and how many vacancies remain out of these?
Certificate positions are all staffed. Some of the classified positions, instructional aides, you know, we're still staffing, but
yeah,
most of these are staffed.
Okay, fantastic. And then when will the schools be able to make their decisions for how they want to use the funds next year? When does that take place?
So we are waiting until we have seabeds, because that will be the data point that we will use for next year's allocation. We plan before we leave for winter break to give the site principals the information of what their allocations will be for 24-25. Then they will be able to work on their plan, bring that to their site council with the idea. Then we will meet with them. So what we've done is we have HR, fiscal services, and curriculum instruction all in the room together. So we review that plan with the principal to ensure that we can staff it, that it meets all of the funding requirements, and that educationally it meets the standards. They're actually required, as well as the principals, as part of their SIPSA, is to show the data that is generating that and how it is targeting our unduplicated pupils, because these are supplemental dollars. Yeah. And so some sites have Title I as well, and some other pots, and so they have to bring all of that cohesive plan together. And then that way, our goal is for this upcoming year is before we leave for the end of this school year, the sites will actually have their SIPSA plans ready and brought to you all. So when we start the new year, instead of having a SIPSA plan that's already a quarter of the way through the year, you'll see those plans before the end of the year.
Great. Yeah, we'll have a little bit more time this year. And I just wanted to say that, I mean, it was really impressive that this could even all come together. I know you mentioned the timeline was pretty quick, but I'm so thankful we've been able to do this. I just have one more question, Angie, I think for you. I want to make sure I heard those numbers right. you gave us the total amount of funding going to our Rancho Cordova schools and the total amount of funding going to our Folsom schools. Would you mind
Yes.
repeating that?
No problem. We had approximately 302 million that was allocated to our Rancho Cordova Title I schools.
Not 302 million, right?
No, 3.2 million.
Okay.
And 300,000 for our Riverview, Mather Heights, and Folsom schools.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment that that makes me so excited.
Us too.
Yeah, a lot of that funding certainly was going to our Rancho schools to begin with, but to be able to see that played out and to be able to really say, you know, we've got $3.2 million going to Rancho, Folsom's getting some of that, but the money's going to the students that are generating that funding. So first of all, I just want to say I'm so thankful for you guys. I know you've worked really hard on this, Sean, and your team, figuring out how the budget works, figuring out where the money's going. Elena and Dr. Kaligian, I mean, this has been a huge lift. And I think this year we're going to see that it's going to make an enormous impact on our schools in Rancho Cordova. So I'm just very proud of our district and for all of you for putting this together for us. Last thing I'll say is, you know, I really feel like if nothing else happens on my time on the board, I will leave feeling like this was a huge success just because of what's going on right here. So thank you for all your hard work and for putting this all together.
I really appreciate your comments, Mr. Hui. Thank you.
Any other?
I just had one follow-up question. How involved are the teachers? I know that there's the school site council, but how involved are the teachers at the sites with deciding how these funds?
Yes, as we go along, we should be asking for everybody at the site's input for how we're going to allocate these funds. And then, like I said a little bit earlier, there's about 30% of the makeup of the site council is of teachers.
Okay.
But there should be a needs assessment done with every teacher.
Okay.
And this year was rushed. This is such a new process and we had such a short timeline, but going forward, there can be a lot more.
Awesome.
And I apologize, one last time, the non-Title I schools, you say 800,000? 300,000.
300,000,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And the reason for that, as we discussed, is we created a formula based off of the unduplicated count. So the dollars come based off those students, and then we distributed those dollars back out. Yeah.
So, and this is just a very brief story, so I apologize for digressing a little. You know, I remember back in, I guess it was 2017, maybe 2016, when I told a friend that I was going to run for school board. They basically said, "What are you, nuts? You know, what a thankless job. You're not going to get anything accomplished. You're a rubber stamp." You know, and I know cynicism, we're in a time period where cynicism runs very high, and I think in society in general. And while I politely disagreed with my friend, because I knew that the school board perhaps is one of the most important elected positions that we have in our society. You know, this supplemental redirect that Mr. Hui advocated strongly for in developing this, I mean, Tim, this was you. You made a difference here. You wanted this approached, and we've seen the success of that approach. And so, you know, it just gives me another example to give people when they get cynical about how you can't make a difference. You can make a difference. And so, congratulations on that. So, let's see. I guess that's it. Well, actually, we'll open up for, even though it's a discussion item, we'll open it up for a public comment.
Sure, and I'd just like to thank Mr. Martin, Mr. Ogden, and Ms. Cabrera for their help with our presentation. It definitely speaks to the fact that this was a joint effort from our district team, and I appreciate their help. Thank you.
Public? Yep. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Melanie Passavoy still. So I
am really pleased to see all of this money that's going to our Rancho Cordova schools to help our students and teachers there. So this is not about that. However, I do have concerns that we have a lot of students, both in Rancho and in Folsom, who don't fit in any of these unduplicated student categories who really need extra help. So at Folsom Middle, we do what is considered amazing on our CAS test, and we have 67% on average of our students pass the math test and at grade level. So that leaves a very recalcitrant 33% or so. We've been there for a long time, and we all know who those kids are. We watch them go from grade to grade, and we have no math intervention teacher. We have no math intervention at advisory or, as part of our elective schedule or anything like that. And we have class sizes of give or take 36 students. So in any given class, there might be 6 to 8 kids who are well below grade level. And providing time and resources to help them when you still have, say, 28 other kids in the room who are in 7th or 8th grade or 6th grade is a very challenging problem to solve, because 28 7th graders cannot very well amuse themselves or beyond. They can amuse themselves, but they can't be on task. So I just want to remind you of that as we're looking at trying to solve these problems, that these monies are useful, but they can't take the place of all of the supports at our school because we have kids that they're not serving. And $300,000 for all of our Folsom schools, clearly once we divide it out by, I don't know, give or take, 10, 12 schools, that's a pretty small amount of money. That's, barely even one staff member per site to help us. So just something to think about when you're budgeting in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Susan Kingsbury, and I don't normally talk. I'm very nervous, but I would like to say that I'm one of the teachers. I could almost cry because I'm one of the teachers that teaches 5th grade. I normally have 34 students in my class, and I normally have about at least in the 20s that are below grade level, not 6 or 8, and I respect that you have that. But I want to say that I'm one of the teachers that benefited from the separating. It's hard to talk about this because last year I gained, this is personal, but I gained about 30 pounds from the stress level of my job. And I'm working really hard to get fit again and get healthy. I take on a lot. I came straight from work to come here. But my students are Title I. I buy them snacks. I buy things like stuffies so that I can give out tickets, so that I can have drawings in my room. And it's all money that I spend for myself. And I will say that even though I spend that, I'm happy to spend that. But the kids that come to me, they need that money so badly. And this change was huge. And I was just sitting there listening to your presentation and inside doing happy cheers, because the difference it made to my school was huge. The breath that I could take knowing that I only have 26 students this year, that I can actually help them, that I can meet with them and not have 10 children at least that are misbehaved or off task because they're worried about their video games or other things and they can't focus. And I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but I just wanted to say it was wonderful. It was a breath of fresh air for our whole school. We have about 20 students when we do MTSS that are in a small group because we only have one support teacher that takes on our MTSS. And if you don't know what that is, it's a time for intervention and a time for really working to boost those skills that are 2 to 3, maybe 4 grades levels below by the time they get to me. It's huge, huge, huge. And I wasn't planning to speak, but I am absolutely head over heels with this. And I can't even tell you how the difference it made at my school.
Thank you for sharing that. Anybody online? Okay. All right. Again, this was just a discussion item. And we will move on to the next item then. Next item is recommended instructional calendar for the 2024-2025 school year. Superintendent.
Yes, coming before you for discussion tonight are two different calendar alternatives or options for the 24-25 school year. One is calendar A and a calendar B. Both of the possible calendars propose 180 instructional days, 3 professional development days, and 2 teacher work days. This would be a change from our current 23-24 calendar, since that includes 181 instructional days, 1 professional development day, and 2 teacher work days, and 2 optional professional development days. So this gives us a more focused and high expectation of, who would be there and what we would be doing on those professional development days. Calendared A starts on August 8th, and it has a 1-week break, sometimes known as Ski Week, in the month of February around the President's holiday week. And it ends before the Memorial Day holiday. Calendared B provides a later start date and a 2-day break in February, similarly to what we're doing this year. So those are some of the major differences in the two calendars, and Mr. Ogden and his team can answer any questions that you may have.
Superintendent, one clarification. You said it would end before Memorial Day. Memorial Day is on the 26th of 2025, so it would end after Memorial Day.
I'm sorry, before June. I meant before June 1st.
Okay.
My apology on that.
Okay. I guess questions from the board.
Can you just verify again that both calendars, the professional development days are required, not optional?
That's correct.
That's the proposal. So we would have to negotiate that.
Okay.
So this is something that the board could give direction, for us to go forward and negotiate at the table, because that is a change in working conditions. It's a different amount of work days. We would look at this as perhaps maybe a 2-year MOU to try this different schedule. But in our contract right now, as it stands, our contract currently has 181 instructional days, 1 professional development day, and 2 work days. So that's our current contract language.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
A question, Board President.
Yes, Shirley.
And I'm open to either of these, really, whatever the direction of the board. I'm willing to go along either way, or what our teachers and admin seem to like the best. The one question I do have is on calendar A, with that 1 week in February. Can you kind of talk us through what's the advantage of taking that full week rather than what we've traditionally done by either 2 3-day weekends in a row or the 2 days?
Well, one of the things that our staff has talked about on our families is we do share a lot of our workers. Their children either go to San Juan or they have a spouse that works in San Juan or vice versa. So it is aligned with a vacation that San Juan School District also takes in February. The other thing that we're able to do, and this is a big thing in Folsom, Cordova, we've done lots of calendars over the years, and as we've looked at them, Folsom, Cordova staff and families like to start midweek. They don't like to start on a Monday. So having those days set up that way allows us to have a midweek start rather than the students starting on a Monday. And then the last piece in Folsom, Cordova, we have a calendar where our employees work 9 months. They get a 10-month paycheck, right? So they work 9+ months. And by ending before June, that allows us to continue to have 10 paychecks for those employees. We're talking about 500-600 employees who, if we went into June, their pay would be spread out over 11 months instead of 10 months. So it's really important for those employees that we end our year in before June.
It'd be the same pay, it would just feel like less.
It would be a smaller paycheck, divided amongst 11 months rather than a larger paycheck over 10.
Okay, that sounds great. Last question, Don, how many calendars do you think you've made in the last 2 years?
Too many. Just 2 right now, but too many.
Appreciate it.
I have one other question. I know this year we kind of ran into issues with AP testing and the way that it aligned with our testing calendar, as well as our breaks and then finals and such.
Yeah.
Are those things considered on this calendar?
What happens, when we build this calendar, what happens is where the holidays fall every year, they make everyone unique. And when I look at this one, the challenge we had this last year was where Christmas fell, right? The Christmas holiday was a little different. So we're going to be having a very early Christmas holiday this year. This one for 23-24 falls further back. And as a result of that, you see more of a balanced schedule than we have this year. The other question that was asked when I talked about this to the board recently was to survey our labor units. And so I have talked to leadership of both bargaining units as well as FCLA, our management team. And they've all said that they overwhelmingly prefer the February break rather than the B calendar does not have that February break. Everything else is basically the same. Starts a little later, but it does not have that February break. So the A calendar is, that's what we've heard, is that's the preferred calendar.
Don, question for the benefit of, I guess, the public who might be watching. I know that one of the questions that the board gets from time to time from parents is, why do we start the school year so dang early? Mm-hmm. Some of them, reckon back to when they were a kid and they start after Labor Day. And believe it or not, some people do advocate for that. Others are like, can you just push it back a little bit? So we're not going back the first or second week of August. For the benefit of the public, can you explain the reason why we do that as it aligns with testing and all that?
Well, primarily the reason we do it is what I shared earlier, to have a 10-month pay cycle. Because if we go into June, it changes that for over a quarter of our employees. So that's a big consideration. The second reason we do it is really more logistics. When you look at when you start your year, when you end your year, most of the districts start about the time we start. There's one district in the area that starts much later than everybody else, and then they go way into June. So it's really the logistics of ending before June. Now, where it's very helpful for our students is our students that are going away to college and starting jobs. They're able to get into the labor force sooner, and they're also able to get prepared for college and get their things ready for college much sooner.
Now, isn't another benefit, at least I was told, is when you start later in the end of August, beginning of September, the first term doesn't end until after Christmas break. So they'll be taking exams in January, whereas by starting earlier, they can finish the term, the first semester, before Christmas break.
Make a really good point. So if you look at that calendar and you imagine you're a student, and if you look at how it falls right now, you can see the second quarter ends right at the break, the winter break. If you were to start 2 weeks later, you'd be taking whatever classes, and then you'd have a 2-week break and then come back and have a week of school and then have your finals. So yeah, that would be a little bit of a challenge.
Okay. All right, Superintendent, what you're looking, actually, I'll go to the public for a second, but what you're looking for from the board is a consensus, and then based on that, we would have this on a future agenda?
Yes. If you're ready to give consensus tonight, it is a discussion item, so it will come back for discussion action. Hopefully at the next meeting is our plan, because the sooner we can get it adopted, then we can get it out to our staff and our families for planning purposes.
People have to plan their ski breaks.
Mr. President, I had a question. Have we taken this out to the teachers to see their thoughts on it?
We've taken it to the bargaining table of both bargaining units, yes.
Well, let's go, I'll tell you what, let's go out for public comment, because sounds like there's a disagreement on that. Welcome.
Okay. Hi, Tony Ruiz Vista. We have never seen this before. I only got this via email yesterday. And so we have not had a chance to share it with Rep Council to get it out to the sites. So I would hope we could maybe, pause a little bit and let all the bargaining units weigh in on this. in an informed manner. The question I have, I need more time to look at this to decide how I feel about one way or the other. One question I did have is something that I brought up last year, I believe. Why are we continuing to factor spring break around Easter?
That was my next question.
Because the colleges are not doing that anymore. The colleges now have, I have a kid in college right now who their spring breaks are always, mid-March. It's not tied to the Easter holiday. And I think that a lot of districts are starting to explore that, and it would certainly make things a lot better for employees and families wanting to travel maybe during that time, because if you wait to travel during spring break, you know what happens to the airfares? Try booking a trip. Try booking an air flight at that point. But yeah, I would like us to actually maybe think about that, and is that something that we can examine, look at the benefits and costs? I'm not married to it one way or the other, but it does become difficult when I had younger kids. I had one in college and one still in high school, and their spring breaks didn't match up. And I know a lot of the parents at Vista have that very situation right now. So that would be something I would like to at least explore, but I do think we need some more time for teachers to actually see this and kind of examine it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Online?
I got one.
Oh, welcome.
Jen Jones, I'm at Sundahl this year. I do appreciate the overlap of a day after, obviously with Christmas. This year, it makes it incredibly hard. My family moved to Texas a few years ago. I'm the primary caretaker of my mom who's got Alzheimer's and my dad who's 80 and is compromised as well with health. So all of my holidays are spent in Texas caring for them, and I work here while I can. I like the idea of maybe having another spring break, but if we didn't have it with the holiday with Easter, I would have to take 2 spring breaks. One when I'm designated, and one when I celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ with my family. So you might open that door to other people who share my same faith. So just let you know that if we kind of break course, we're going to have some issues with attendance perhaps, and with the teacher as well. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online? Okay. All right. So what are the board's thoughts here? Again, we're not voting tonight. We're just giving some, direction to staff. It will be back at another meeting, and presumably we'll have some additional comments. But I think if I understand correctly, the superintendent and her staff would like to get this adopted sooner rather than later.
So the consensus that I have garnered from students and teachers at my school is that they want a calendar, and specifically the beginning of the A calendar. Of course, the ski break's great for students who, it kind of gives them a break before that long stretch of spring, all that. I mean, it gives you a break from work, and it gives you a starting point of I just need to make it to spring break, and I need to make it to May, and it's over. But for teachers and students alike, when the beginning of the school day starts in the very middle of the week, like on Thursday, it, at least from the teachers that I've asked, it helps them plan. So at the beginning of the year, normally everyone likes to do icebreakers, and this year we did it was 4 days of icebreakers, right? Because we started on Tuesday and ended the week on Friday. With the Thursday, Friday, if we start on Thursday, Friday, we would only have some teachers would only do 2 days of icebreakers, and then they could go straight into lessons, because they don't want to interrupt the flow right in the middle of the week. Most lessons start on the beginning of the week and stuff like that. So I feel like less days of those repetitive icebreakers would be good for students, and it would be good for teachers who are really sick and tired of playing those name tag games.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a comment as well.
Yes, please.
I am in support of the ski break calendar as well. I won't be here next year, so I don't really care how this calendar affects me. But as I said, I'm for the A calendar. just because of that additional break. I know many of you might be familiar with the term spring slump, and that's when attendance rates just drop in the weeks before and after spring break. And especially in March and April, this district has seen attendance rates drop. And so perhaps we could consider implementing this just to combat that issue.
Very good point.
Yeah, I may be in the minority here. I do agree with Mr. Reeves. I think we need time to digest this and let it marinate for a minute and actually have an opportunity to talk to the teachers to get their feel if they haven't, or if they just seen it yesterday. Obviously, it's not they didn't have enough time to look at it. So, I understand the urgency of getting it approved. I just think we need a little more time, because I can guarantee you teachers are going to be emailing us or calling us, or if we're out at schools, they're going to be talking to us about the calendars, what may work, what won't work, or whatever. So, like I said, I may be in the minority, but I think we should sit on it for a minute.
I'm with Mr. Clark on that. I think that teachers clearly have not seen this, and so there needs to be input. One of the major things that we heard afterwards was the testing calendar. So I think that having the testing calendar alongside our school instructional calendar is really important, because that affects all students, but especially our high schoolers that are preparing for college that we're making this schedule for. So I want to make sure that they are aligned appropriately, and how breaks fall, and is that February break an appropriate time to take a break? Because if it is right before a huge testing window, that might not be an appropriate time to have an entire week off school. So looking at it alongside with the testing calendar is going to be really important for teachers as well. So I think teachers need to see both of those to make a decision that's appropriate for our students.
Okay.
Yeah, I would kind of actually agree with my colleagues. It's clear that the teachers need a little bit more time to digest this. So, I mean, I know we wanted to kind of bring it back at the next meeting, but if we could maybe do it the following meeting after that, that's still pretty early, but that would at least give us a couple additional weeks to, get out with the teachers and get that input. I mean, my gut is that A would be probably the calendar that will be selected, but that's really hard to say when we don't really have a lot of stakeholder input from the teachers. So if we could just push it back maybe to the following meeting after that from what we were planning, that would be my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. And yeah, Mr. Ruiz would love to see you guys get some time to look at this. So a couple of ideas around that, maybe just one, depending on what the answer is. But is that second meeting in October, does that give us enough time, Dr. Kaligian?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And I would say between now and October 5th, we could also start, putting this information together. We wouldn't be waiting. I mean, if we could do it sooner, we will. But we want to give ourselves ample time to get the feedback, to look at the testing calendar. So let's say by the 19th, we'll have it come back as an action item. If we have additional information, we can put a discussion again next meeting, just to keep you abreast of the feedback we've collected to date.
Yeah, I think that's great, as long as it gives you enough time to implement everything.
As for myself, I do lean towards calendar A over calendar B. And I'm completely open to, pushing this out one more meeting to get the teacher feedback on the calendars. But if we're going to take this extra time, can we also get the parent feedback on these calendars? Because this will impact the parents as well. And maybe we could send it out to the PTAs or the site councils if they don't have a PTA, some way to get some parent feedback as well.
Maybe thought exchange. You could do something with that.
And maybe on the thought exchange, we could put in, would you be interested in an alternate week besides spring break aligning with Easter as a possibility, and see kind of where stakeholders are with that?
Yeah, could do that.
Board President?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just throw one more thing out there. I think you'll appreciate this.
Okay.
I guess, is it possible we could bring back an action item next meeting that we choose between one of the two calendars, or we have two action items and one we vote no on and one we vote yes on?
Are you talking about bring two options back at the next meeting?
If it would be advantageous to get this done sooner, but we want to let everybody have some time with it, yeah, it would, I mean, from a governance standpoint, is that a possibility?
Well, what we would probably do, and an action item, is then give a choice of two calendars, and we can give our recommendation, but ultimately the board can, like what you're doing right now.
We've done it that way before.
We have.
It's been
It
a
seems like-
little while, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks would be enough time to take a look at it.
I think, let's say the action by the 19th, no, and then,
Okay,
yeah, gives us some flexibility there.
perfect.
So just for clarification, when?
Is it too late to comment? I'm sorry.
Oh, please.
Very, very much. I just have a very alarming realization when I'm looking at the colors of the before that first day of school yellow. We have 2 pink. That means planned out, chock full of PD, whether we want it or not. 1 gray day. We had 2 gray days this year, you guys. That means that 1 gray day on the 7th is full of a school staff meeting, a meet and greet. When do we set up our classrooms? So, just interesting. Just wanted to point it out. Thank you.
It was actually
Thank you.
comment too.
What was it?
Melanie, sorry.
So I will say I was also slightly confused because I think teacher workday is not very clear as to whether that's time in our classroom or because with 2 professional development days and then 1 teacher workday, it is a little confusing as to whether that also includes our opening meeting and staff meetings and all of those things, or if that's just a full day in our classroom. But actually, that really wasn't what I wanted to speak about was really about getting parent input, because to me, after we just talked about all these amazing programs we're doing in Rancho Cordova to support our students, we just added a full week where we are not educating our students. And that is a lot of something that has to be planned for a lot of students who don't otherwise have a place to be while their parents are working full time. So I just think that's something to take into account, is that not everybody gets a vacation of 5 days when their kids are off from school, and covering 2 days with family or friends or big kids taking care of little kids is a lot different than 5 full days. And so, that's just another feature. And it's pretty fast after winter break to be trying to figure out kid coverage again for another full week if you're have full-time working parents trying to figure out kid care.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, Don, this does need to be negotiated, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a discussion item. This isn't an action item tonight.
Right,
So
yeah.
really, the idea here is for the board to look at it for the first time, a couple of choices. And like I shared, I meet with both bargaining teams, CSE and FCA. These calendars were looked at by both bargaining teams. And so Tony's not part of the bargaining team, so that's why he wasn't at that meeting when we looked at it. So, but this was looked at by the bargaining teams. And again, it was a discussion item. It's something that we're introducing to them, saying, in the past, we haven't done this break in February. So is this something we want to consider? So it's a discussion item at this point.
Okay.
I would like to just make a comment on calendar B as well. My only thing with calendar B that I have had some feedback to, especially from some of like the music teachers, band specifically, when we start very early, that means that they have to have their band camps and things like that in the July period. So they kind of like having the later start because it gives them the time to do that. It also allows for special athletics. So if you have teams that are going to camps and things like that, it allows a little bit extra time to be able to participate in some of those things. When we start on the earlier date, sometimes that precludes them from being able to go to some of those additional things too. So just a comment on that.
Let me piggyback on that. Let me just ask one more question. And I know there's no universal school calendar from across the country, but I do know that many school districts, maybe it's a majority, maybe it's not a majority, but many school districts take not the full week off for Thanksgiving. They are in school Monday and Tuesday. They're off Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Have we ever thought about taking that approach, understanding that, all right, the first year, if we do this, we're probably gonna have horrible attendance on Monday and Tuesday, but, because people aren't used to it. But any thought of that? Because you could potentially combine the two calendars together into one, where you have the week off in February to break up the long stretch that the students spoke of. And at the same time, start a little bit later, because you would pick up those 2 school days, potential school days in November, and be able to push the calendar back a little bit. And has there been any thought or discussion of that?
It's something, there hasn't been discussion recently about that, but last time we did calendars, as you recall, we did calendar A, and then we had A version 1 and A version 2, and we had calendar B and B version 1 and B version 2.
Right.
So I could absolutely give a calendar C here that had that option. That's something we could bring back also.
My concern with that is if we're talking about tying, or it's been proposed that we're tying possibility of teacher pay increase to ADA, and then we put in a calendar that will absolutely have terrible ADA on those days, I don't think we want to do the two together. So maybe if they were separated, but if we're moving in that direction, we should be doing whatever we can to get students at school. And we should be doing that anyways, but we shouldn't be creating a situation where, well knowing we will have 2 days of school where kids are not there, so.
So if we're, you're looking for direction, I would say probably where we landed originally, bringing back on the 19th, or the next meeting, maybe giving us an update, and then bringing back calendar on the 19th for us to vote on. If the rest of the board's okay with that, between these two.
Do we make this clear as mud for the
You don't want a third one.
I'm seeing A1 and B1 and C1 and.
Well, we still
yes.
may. No promises that won't happen.
Yes, we'll bring back an update of what we have to date. Obviously, we need to get more feedback and look at some other data points as well. And then still try to have an action item by the 19th of October.
Does that give us enough time for teacher and parental input?
We're going to make it work, yeah.
We do meet with bargaining team,
On the 11th.
both bargaining teams before the 19th.
Yeah.
So.
I think it needs to go to more than the bargaining teams though. So that's my, because those bargaining teams, while they bring it back to the site, it oftentimes, especially with secondary, is on a Friday. So depending when that meeting is, they might not be bringing it back to the rest of the staff until a Friday. So for me, the schedule doesn't impact me as a board member. It impacts everybody that we need to get input from. So I will not be making a decision until we have full input from parents, from teachers, having all of the calendars. Because at the end of the day, this is something that doesn't impact us. It impacts the people that we represent. And so we need to make sure that we have their voice very well heard. So if it goes to the bargaining units and it hasn't had a chance to go out at their sites afterwards, depending whether that's a Thursday or a Friday, our meeting's on a Thursday. So that's still not enough time for them to gather that, depending when it goes out. So just making sure that it goes to the full site, not just the bargaining team meeting.
All right, I think we're done with this topic. All right, let's, moving on to item, 14, information, 2023 secondary summer school report. Superintendent?
Yes, as is traditional each year, we do a summary of our summer school programs. In this case, our summer school program was at the high school level for credit recovery and some original credit, and also our extended school year, which impacted our elementary, middle, high school, and adult special ed population. And we want to thank our principals and our teachers who worked in these programs throughout the summer and provided expanded learning opportunities for students in summer school, as well as our ELOP programs. So some of our students during the summer school time, again, had 9-hour days or extended days for about half of their summer vacation time. So unless there are any specific questions, this is an informational item. It's more of an executive summary. And again, I thank those that helped put it together and submitted that to Dr. Huber.
All right, any questions on this information? Guess not. All right. It's information, but is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on it? Online? No? All right.
Can I just make a quick comment on summer school? I did get some feedback from teachers that they would like to have a little more input on some of the curriculum because they said that what was on the summer school curriculum didn't necessarily align with what they had taught through the year. So sometimes they were having to redo some of their programming and the lesson plans because it wasn't quite lining up. And so it was hard to also catch the kids up sometimes on the credit recovery because some of the stuff that they were teaching wasn't exactly in line with what they had through the regular school year. So I think what the feedback I got was if they could have a little more input and if we could also maybe have some supports maybe during either lunch times of maybe having some extra tutoring for English and math specifically, maybe some just some additional supports there to just keep those supports there. Just a couple of teachers had requested that. So that's just a comment I have on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to item 15, the superintendent's report. Superintendent?
Yeah, a couple things. We under the consent agenda tonight, approved all of our single plans for student achievement, and we heard the presentation, and I want to thank all those at our school sites, our staff, our parents, our leadership that brought those single plans for student achievement together, and thank Elena and our fiscal team, Sean and Linda, and all those at the district that helped support that piece. And looking forward to the timeline this coming year that'll be a little bit more proactive in putting those together and bringing them to the board. We also found out in the last week that we have 4 schools that are being recognized as California PBIS recognition schools. And this is the most number we've had in 1 year. There are 2 levels that our schools are being recognized. At the silver level, we have Mills Middle School being recognized again for Silver Star recognition and Mangini Ranch Elementary. And for the bronze level is Cordova High School and Rancho Cordova Elementary. So those are new to the recognition. So they'll proudly display those banners and recognitions at their school sites. And we want to congratulate everybody because the PBIS award and recognition is based upon factors in building a positive culture and climate. And there's actually an inventory that the schools use that the state gives that they have to adjudicate themselves and evaluate that. So that says a lot for the work that's been done around building those connections and a positive climate. And I just want to do a shout out for our student wellness teams. They are busily working at all of our sites, and the teams are there to support our students' mental health needs, whatever those needs are on a daily basis, but they're also doing risk assessments and some of the high-level support for our students in need. And this includes our mental health specialists, our social workers, our nurses, our psychologists, our counselors, our leadership. But I had a chance to attend one of their meetings the other day and hear some of their dialogue. And, it's definitely a passion and a calling, just like anybody who is teaching in education or working in our classified ranks or in leadership. But, these folks are seeing some really extreme situations that, they are trained to be able to support our students and their families. And it takes strength, emotionally to do that job as well. But I'm thankful that we have the student wellness teams that we do that are supporting our students' emotional well-being, because that's just as important as developing their academic success as well. So just a shout out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to board reports. We'll start with the students. Board member Merrill.
Hello, board. I don't have much to say today. However, I do have a couple things. A while ago, I've adopted the mindset to jump at every opportunity that is presented to me, which is a big part of why I'm on this board. I've recently applied for the student board member position on the California Board of Education, which is pretty cool. I just submit my grades and letters of recommendations and a bunch of other documents. Normally there's 150 applicants, so let's hope I make the 12 semifinalists. I'm not sure when I'll be notified if I made it or not, but honestly, I don't really mind if I don't make it to the top 12. All that matters to me is that, I tried my best and I jumped at the opportunity. I'd like to give a shout out to all the student governments across the district who are beginning to prepare for their homecomings. They make high school campuses just amazing and really welcoming for freshmen and, a memorable impact for the seniors who are leaving us. And one last thing, I want to wish good luck to our Lady Lancer flag football team tonight. They're playing, I forgot the high school, but they're playing right now as we speak. So yeah.
Thank you. Let's see, board member Melajor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, FCUSD. We're halfway through the semester almost right now, which is insane to me. I wish the best of luck to students who are preparing for their midterms right now, as many kids at Vista are. I just want to highlight again that it is Suicide Prevention Month, and which accentuates the need for mental health resources at our school sites. I did have the opportunity to help Dr. Kaligian tour Vista last week with the FCEA President Van as well as Dr. Moore. It was really great seeing all the various different facets of my school. I did learn some things even though I go to that school, and I want to apologize to some of the teachers at Vista who I put in the spotlight for visiting the classroom with the superintendent without advance notice. But it was really great seeing especially the new ethnic studies class, and I was just amazed seeing how connected the students are to the curriculum. So shout out to Ms. Ray and Mr. Schwan at Vista Del Lago for all you do, and all the other ethnic studies teachers across our school district. I want to shout out Van. I wish him the best of luck. That is a very, very prestigious position. I'm sure he'll probably get it. He's probably one of the best colleagues I've worked with, even though I've known him for maybe only a month, but he's really great. And I want to wish, lastly, our Folsom High Bulldogs the best of luck with their football game against their historic rival De La Salle, which I'll be watching tomorrow. That's all.
All right, thank you. Let's see, board member Lofthouse.
I just wanted to say Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, and I appreciated seeing the presentations throughout the district that we got sent to us, and I've seen some in person, so I love that our school sites are spreading that culture. And good luck to Van. That's amazing. We can't wait to hear how it goes. And if it doesn't go in your favor, great job trying. And really, that's it. So.
All right. Board member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good luck to you, Van. That is a great opportunity for you, and we wish you nothing but the best. I want to thank Dr. Kaligian for getting that information out about Hispanic Heritage Month. I would only hope that more schools would participate in it next year. I think, what do we have, five or six?
That responded, yes.
Yeah. Well, they responded. Maybe there were some that did do it and just didn't respond, but I haven't had a chance to go out there and check it out. I will do so next week. A couple of Saturdays ago, I had the opportunity to go to a Learning Pond chess tournament that was put on by a couple of community members up in Folsom, but it invited chess players from throughout the Sacramento region. And I was so incredibly proud. and I'm hoping that Sutter Middle, Theodore Judah, Riverview STEM, and Folsom Middle got their trophies. I do have Vista Del Lago State Trophy, but it's amazing that all of those schools from FCUSD beat out the other schools in chess. So my only hope is to try to bring that game to our other schools in Rancho Cordova, i.e. Cordova Gardens, Villa, White Rock, and the others. And then on a solemn note, Thelma King, who worked for the district for 33 years, and I think 35 years. She was a crossing guard in yard duty, passed away, I believe, on September 9th. And I know that their family is trying to work on some kind of memorial at Cordova Lane, but I just felt that it would be right to dedicate this meeting in her honor with the board's consensus. Other than that, that's it. I look forward to De La Salle and Folsom tomorrow night. It should be a good game.
Chris, what was the former
Thelma King.
Thelma King? K-I-N-G?
Yes. K-I-N-G, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see. Board member Larrett.
First of all, I just wanted to say how proud we are of you, Van. That's amazing. Congratulations on that. So I finished my first class for Masters in Governance today. So it's always interesting and really cool to be with other trustees and superintendents and find the differences between the districts and things like that. And in some of the discussion today, I was talking specifically about the funding that we do with our supplemental dollars. And there was a lot of districts who were like very interested in the way that that's been changed. So I really appreciate all the time that the staff has put into it. You know, when we were touring schools in the spring, that was like one of the questions that we were asking is, you know, how are you guys feeling about this? And it was overwhelmingly that teachers and administrators were feeling like they could really be engaged in the process of being able to you know, decide how their schools were going to be progressing. And what the conversation really was today was that, you know, while we're trying to span a whole district, that really we can get down into micro needs of school sites specifically and students specifically, and by changing the funding formulas and things like that, how those address those needs. So just wanted to say thank you again to all the hard work that went into that, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Board member Hui.
Thank you. Yeah, Van, congrats. Good luck. I just feeling all sorts of gratitude tonight, and so want to express certainly, you know, as was just mentioned, partly for the supplemental funding and how wonderful that is. We, as a board, often probably ask our district staff to do too much, but you tend to do an amazing job at it. So, you know, I think another thing we were tasked with, but really was brought to us because of a lot of hard work, is something that was Mr. Meldor mentioned, but the ethnic studies class. So just a quick story about seeing in real time the impact of a class like that. And I'm going to tell the story because I'm certain my son is not watching right now on YouTube. So I'll embarrass him. But we have one kid that is taking ethnic studies right now, a junior. And pretty much from day one, he's come back saying, this is amazing. Like, they're talking about me and where I've come from, and I've never really heard this before. And even a couple of weeks ago, where it really came home was he literally came home and was looking up ethnic study majors at colleges. So I'll stop before I get too emotional, but I'm so appreciative of the work that everybody's putting in this district in general. All that hard work and heavy lifting, it really does pay off just on a human level. So thank you for all that work.
All right, and I do not have a report tonight, so we will move on to advanced planning. Let's see, the next board meeting is on October 5th, 2023, We do have that special board study session regarding bonds, which is this, and facilities, which is our second one, and that is on Monday, October 9th. And then I think we made a lot of reference to October 19th meeting where we will potentially or probably be voting on the school calendar for the following year. All right, you also have the 12-month board calendar for your reference, and then that takes us to suggested future agenda items. Does anybody have any suggested future agenda items? I do not, but I do notice that that ROTC item somehow fell off of this calendar. It was on the last one, so if we could get that added back on.
We will do that. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, the board took care of all of matters that we needed to take care of in closed session, so we do not need to recess to closed session. So that takes us to adjournment, and we will adjourn in Thelma King's honor tonight. And so unless there is any objection, we will adjourn thinking of Thelma King. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.